Welcome to another story from the Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. On this programme, we ask one simple question. What is God doing in Israel and the wider Middle East today? How are we to make sense of the current unrest that is causing such turmoil in the Arab nations? Does the Bible have anything specific to say about this? And what about reconciliation between Jew and Arab? Is this possible against such a troubled backdrop? To help answer these questions, I met Marcel Rebiai recently at his home in Jerusalem, which, incidentally, overlooks Mount Zion. Marcel is leader of the Community of Reconciliation, working amongst both Jews and Palestinians. Here's what he had to say.
First, I have to say that it's always a little bit difficult if we take some scriptures and try to apply them on actual events. But I would say yes, at least there are hints in the scripture we can look at. Let me say first, personally I believe that God is preparing to fulfill his promise he gave in Isaiah 19. In Isaiah 19, it said that the time will come where God is going to reconcile Egypt, the Arab world, and Israel together to a degree that they will have not only a relationship, but a commonwealth together. And it said that after having been reconciled by God, they will be together even a blessing on the earth. So somehow God is going to prepare that. Even we don't believe that this can happen, or it's not what we see today. But on the other hand, that's the promise of God. And so what God promises, it's going to be fulfilled. Because as he says in the Torah, he says, God is not a man that he should lie. Should he promise and not keep? And so what we see today, I believe it's a melting down of the walls which are surrounding these nations. And I would say these walls are mainly built by Islam, who are keeping the people deeply imprisoned in a mindset. And God actually uses right now the frustration of the young people without no work, no future, who realize that the system they live in, it's not really providing life for them. And so what we see today, this uprising actually, which comes especially from non-organized, we can say a group of young people, it's something which in the Arab world, they don't know how to deal with, because that's not a clear opposition with a strategy. And so I think for the first time the people in the Arab world realized we can really do something. This prison, it's not absolutely closed. And what we can see is God uses that in melting down this walls, is using to help many people living in the Arab nations to be open for new things and also to be open for new thinking. And we have seen and heard that many in this way are also open to engage in discussion, in debates, in listening, also concerning the gospel. We hear that people are coming to the Lord within this difficult situation. So I think on one hand, God is opening a door to these nations that people will really be able to hear the gospel. And I think also that many, many of them will end up in Europe. And I hope that the church will be prepared to reach out to them, because Libya and many other nations were not allowed till today to leave their countries, and now the borders are open.
So it's a window of opportunity.
Absolutely, and I hope that the church will not miss this window of opportunity, that they should train people to bring them the gospel when they are at your doorsteps. And then, in the light of the end time, I think it's important to understand, I believe personally that because there's no organized opposition who had brought these regimes down, there is somebody else who's going to take advantage of this process. And I personally believe those who are really organized, have a clear agenda, are the Muslim Brothers, Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and in other Arab nations. And they, I think, at the end is going to put themselves on the head of this movement. And unfortunately, they may take over. And in doing that, they will cause much more tension than we had before, because they're going to, I think, break the treaty with Israel. It needs a religious fanatic mind to start a war with Israel. And I think that's what we are heading for, because always in the Muslim world they think one way to unite people, or at least to divert from the real problems, is to focus on Israel, that this is actually the source of conflict and of misery, and this is going to happen. So I think when this is going to happen, it's also working into Isaiah 19. When you read Isaiah 19, it speaks first about a civil war in Egypt, which it's going to happen, I think, because when the Muslim Brotherhood will take over, in Egypt there are so many Christian and also so many secular opposition people. They will not just bow to a Muslim Brotherhood regime, and then we may have a civil war in Egypt. And the second one, when they're going to go into war with Israel, we have again a fulfillment of Isaiah 19, where God says it will be so devastating for Egypt and for the other Arab nations who are involved in that war, that they will call to God for help, as it's written, and He will intervene, and then the fulfillment of the promise of Isaiah 19 will start. So how long this is going to take, I can't tell. But one thing I'm sure, today things change from one day to another.
Meanwhile, Marcel, you're working here with your teams in Jerusalem. Your heart is still very, very much to see reconciliation between Jew and Arab, Palestinian here. Are you still seeing that happen, or are these tensions that you've just been describing causing people to divide again and separate?
We see both. On one hand, there are encouraging signs where we really can see Jews and Arabs are reaching out to each other, especially those who together believe in the Messiah, Yeshua. We see that, and this is very encouraging, and every time when you see this reconciliation becoming reality, you can also feel really the power of reconciliation which flows out of such relationships. At the same time, I have to admit also there are tremendous warfare against this reconciliation between Jews and Arabs from different parts, from not only from the Islamic side, from Arab nationalism or from Jewish nationalism, sometimes even from within the church, who don't understand that and somehow try to take sides either for Palestinian righteousness or take sides for Israel because they are against replacement theology. And as somebody who with all his heart believe in God's promises for Israel, I think we have to be very careful. We have to be careful that we take only sides for God and not emotionally for one or the other side. Because there's such a promise connected to the reconciliation between Jews and Arabs, as we read in Isaiah 19, that this will affect the whole world. That's what the prophet says. Because of that, the enemy is doing everything to break down this relationship between Jews and Arabs and to separate them. And I think for us as a church, it's important that we understand that and invest to bring them together, to encourage them, and really to help them understand together they will be a blessing. Israel as the inheritance of God, and the Arabs or Egypt as it's written, Egypt, my people, Assur, the work of my hand. I would say that when the children of Abraham are reconciled together, God is going to release something very special. Also for the church, not only for the world.
Marcel Rebiai, leader of the Community of Reconciliation, talking to me in Jerusalem recently. You're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. Marcel, who himself is from a mixed Arab-Jewish background, is well placed to understand the challenge of reconciliation between these two peoples. But as you heard, he believes it's God's passion and promise to see this happen. So how can we help? Well, the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a small charity based in the UK that supports Jewish and Arab Christians. For more information, articles and books, please visit our website www.olivetreefund.org, where you can also leave a donation. If you'd like to receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please either email inquiries@olivetreefund.org or write to me, Julia Fisher, at the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, P.O. Box 850, Horsham, RH12 9GA in the UK. Do join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.